the historic moment that has captured the world's attention. The Gaza peace accord that has finally come into effect, marking a new chapter of hope and reconciliation. 20 hostages held captive for nearly 2 years have finally been released. The emotional homecoming met with tears, cheers and heartfelt embraces. This landmark agreement signals a profound step towards lasting peace in a region long marred by conflict. Now, the center of all this is United States President Donald Trump. Hailed by many as the peacemaker of the moment, a red carpet welcome awaited Trump, with Benjamin Netanyahu himself receiving him at the airport with a warm hug. Thereafter, he received standing ovation at the Israeli parliament for his efforts in the release of the hostages. Benjamin Netanyahu, in fact, hailed Donald Trump as his real friend and the real friend of Israel, and also warned Hamas of any consequences. Trump continues, remember, to maintain that this is the end of the war. But is this really the end of the war is the big question. Several challenges lie ahead. A key obstacle to lasting peace is Hamas's refusal to disarm or reduce its military capabilities. Viewing its arsenal as vital resistance and negotiation leverage, Hamas's stance raises the risk of renewed violence. Gaza's damaged infrastructure and slow aid hinders rebuilding as well. Without steady funding and security, conditions will worsen, risking peace. Unresolved Palestinian statehood fuels internal divisions between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, weakening their negotiating position. Without unity and a clear political framework, in fact, ceasefires risk being temporary rather than lasting solutions. Gaza's conflict affects neighboring countries and regional stability. Any flare-up risk, escalating tensions and undermining peace efforts could also be done. Managing this is really crucial to maintaining the ceasefire. Gaza's post-war governance is weak and divided, risking chaos and renewed violence without effective leadership to manage reconstruction and stability. So we are asking, all the 20 hostages have been freed, but will Gaza peace plan actually hold?
I remember Hillary Clinton during a debate, she said, look at him, he's going to go to war with everybody. And actually, she said, he's got a personality that's all about war. No, and my personality actually is all about stopping wars.
Thank you for recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Donald Trump is the greatest friend that the state of Israel has ever had in the White House. No American president has ever done more for Israel.
Let me introduce my guest on debate number 2 on Plain Speak. Lev Aaron, senior journalist from Haifa, Israel, is joining us. Also joining us is Sushant Sareen, senior fellow ORF. And last but not the least, Manju Seth, former diplomat, is also with us. Ms. Seth, I'll begin with you. What do you make of what you've seen so far today? Whether it is the Trump address, whether it is Benjamin Netanyahu calling him the friend of Israel, and of course, the release of the 20 hostages.
I think it's been, in a way, historic, because there didn't seem to be any light at the end of the tunnel, the way things had been developing and the way the situation had gone from bad to worse. And there was no end to any, end to the war and the conflict, which was, just going on. And I think the fact that all the hostages have been released, I think, is a very good development. But as you very rightly said, it's only the first step, and many challenges remain. President Trump has declared that this is the end of the war, but that we have to wait and see. Has it really ended? Because there are still many issues that need to be resolved, including the new sort of administration or the new situation in Gaza. And the fact that they're saying there will be a US, they're talking about that as the US-led kind of forces to remain there, etc. I think that is not something the Hamas is going to accept. And of course, the fact that they've said we will not disarm. So there are many other sort of issues. But yes, the fact that this has happened, there's been a stop of the war that had been going on endlessly, and creating a humanitarian crisis in the region, in Gaza, of course, and I think it was something which needed to end. And for that, I think the very first step that it has stopped, the hostages have come back, the Palestinian peace, I think is a very positive step, positive development.
Mr. Aaron, I'd like to also understand from you, as a common Israeli also, it has been a very, very emotional day. Finding the family members who have survived come back to their loved ones is huge. Finally happened after 2 long years. That sentiment, nobody better can tell us and narrate before us than you.
Look, each and every house that you enter in Israel today, you see the tears, you see the tears of joy. Nobody thinks about geopolitics. People could not breathe for 2 years because our brothers and sisters were inside the tunnels of Hamas. And each and every time that we tried to rescue them, sometimes we did more damage than good. So in this sense, I think it is the happiest moment in Israel for the last 2 years at least.
Right. And come back to you. There is a little bit of reverb in your audio. We'll get our producers to fix that for us. Sushant, would want to understand from you the speech, and it was a long drawn one by Donald Trump. He of course did not win the Nobel Peace Prize, but as the peacemaker, and US has been very, very central to this entire Gaza peace plan. It is also to an extent called the Trump peace plan. Do you see this working? Do you see this holding?
I'll be very surprised if it was to hold. Frankly, I don't think it really solves the problem which is there. It does not in any way take that the basic issue which is creating problems in that part of the world. It does not really move the needle forward. What does it do? If the plan is that in Gaza there will be, at least so far what we know, there is that 21 or 20 point peace plan. There will be some kind of an international receivership that will take care of Gaza. There will be reconstruction. Now, reconstruction is all very well. Does that address the political issues? From Israel's side, the issue of security, the issue of these armed groups, terror groups which have been coming in and attacking Israel and threatening its security. From the Palestinian side, there is really no coherent political leadership which can come in and take charge. The Palestinian Authority has lost all credibility. Hamas is unacceptable. So who solves this problem? So there is going to be that political issue. So I would, I hope I'm wrong, but I think this is just a temporary pause in what has been happening over the last 70, 80 years. I agree with the ambassador. She's quite correct that, look, the current stage of the war had reached a kind of a deadlock. The Israelis were not really able to achieve what they wanted to achieve. And Hamas had actually ensured the destruction of Gaza. It wasn't moving forward. To that extent, this breaks that deadlock, gets the hostages back. There will be some prisoners that Israel will also release. But how are the next steps going to play forward? Because from whatever we have heard so far, there are serious reservations even among those 8 Muslim countries with which Donald Trump had spoken to. They say that the terms of the deal were changed. Now, it's not important whether you, me, the ambassador, or anybody else accepts that deal or not, and we think it's a good deal or not. The protagonists accept that deal. Will that actually move the needle forward? I'm not entirely sure of that.
Okay. Ms. Seth, Gaza in many ways has been called an apocalyptic moonscape. That extent and the extent of the damage that we've seen in those visuals that continue to trickle in and dominate global headlines, the practicality of rebuilding and reconstruction plan, how much of that do you see happening?
Yes, it's going to be extremely difficult unless, as very rightly mentioned by Mr. Sareen, unless there is long-term peace, the reconstruction is also not going to take off as we think it will. But yes, it is important because the way it has become right now, as you said, it's like an apocalyptic, a kind of place which it has been turned into now. And there is absolutely, no place for people to live. I mean, the Gazans are coming back, their citizens are coming back, but, there is no home left. So reconstruction is going to be a major challenge.
So what is the first step for the Gazans? Is it recognition, statehood? Because that too hasn't happened.
So yes, of course, that is the first step, or the second step really, because if they're coming back, where are they going to live? They have to be resettled somewhere. So either they are resettled in their own homes, but I think this summit that is going to take place in Egypt might find some, of course, as very rightly said, there are all different views even on on the future of Gaza. But in case President Trump and the other, participants are able to find some kind of way forward of what needs to be done in Gaza, I think they need to reconstruct, of course. And they will, I'm sure, be discussing the recognition part as well, and whether they can coexist and how the coexistence will work out. And where will it work out? And where will the borders be? So I think those are all challenges that need to be worked out. But first, of course, where we live.
Right. Ms. Seth, I'll just come back to you in a bit. I request all my guests, in fact, to stay on with us. We are now joined by CNN international correspondent Nick Robertson. He's joining us from Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. And Nick, I'd first want to understand from you. And let's talk about that address by US President Donald Trump. There was a little skirmish that we noticed before Trump took to the podium. What happened there?
Yeah, two of the sort of left-wing MPs within the parliament there, Ofer Kassif, an Israeli member of the Knesset and an Arab member of the Knesset. Ofer Kassif, I interviewed earlier on in this year about press freedoms and freedoms as well, and is somebody within the Knesset who's been outspoken previously, has been barred from voting in the Knesset. But here he broke Knesset rules. They both Knesset members broke Knesset rules apparently by lifting signs about supporting Palestinians in Gaza. Ofer Kassif has aligned himself with the Palestinian cause in Gaza, and they were and raising placards against regulations within the Knesset, and they were very quickly ejected. But these are two politicians who have, unlike the vast majority of other members of the Knesset, have really supported the Palestinian cause through the past 2 years of conflict in Gaza.
Okay. Now, so far, the role of US mediation is central to this entire Gaza peace plan. Trump's involvement has been highlighted as the key to brokering the initial phase. What has been the key highlight particularly, or highlights from this particular address of US President Donald Trump?
I think it gave us an understanding of his philosophy, and his philosophy is there is peace through strength, that the supply of US-made weapons to Israel has put Israel in a position of strength. It has destroyed the nuclear stockpiles in Iran. According to President Trump, none of this could have happened without that being done to Iran. The region, he said, would feel under threat if Iran's weapons, potential nuclear weapons or enriched uranium were not destroyed in this way. So there's a very clear narrative from President Trump who supported Israel to get this far. The other narrative as well is that enduring peace in the region comes through economic stability. That he's looking to leaders in this region and those who are showing up here in Sharm el-Sheikh to contribute to the economic rebuilding in Gaza, the physical rebuilding in Gaza, and in that way ensure stability. We didn't get a sense from President Trump in that speech about some of the finer points of his 20-point plan, which is the disarmament of Hamas, something Israel will look to the International Stabilization Force, which again he didn't mention, but the size, scale, scope, mandate of that International Stabilization Force that would, in theory, is expected to go into Gaza. No details there. But what President Trump was very, very clear on is this is the time this is the time for end of war. He believes the war is over. He wants the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, to take the victories that he's got so far and move towards peace. And that was a very clear message. It was interesting to me that he shouted out support for Yair Lapid, the lead opposition member who spoke in the Knesset after Prime Minister Netanyahu, before President Trump. You know, that's a kind of a backhand way, if you will, of telling Prime Minister Netanyahu, whom President Trump lavished praise and support on, that we also value other politicians here in Israel who are opposed to you. And I think that was quite a powerful message as well.
Right. Thank you so much for your inputs, Nick. Thank you so much for joining us here on CNN News 18. We'll go back to my guests who continue to be with us. Lev, I wanted to understand from you, multiple standing ovations. That's what President Donald Trump received while speaking at the Israeli parliament. That is one aspect of it. But when we, in fact, turn our attention to the speech of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he also left it with a warning for the Hamas. So that stance that Israel has maintained vis-a-vis Hamas, where they are not going to budge from, that remains.
We cannot sugarcoat it that Netanyahu is not in a very easy position. Because on one hand, Trump wants Israel to give up some of the right-wing hardline ideology to move on to peace, not only with the Arab world, also with Indonesia and so on. On the other hand, Netanyahu has 15 radical right-wingers inside his coalition. Without them, he goes to elections. Even after this agreement, all pollsters show that if Netanyahu goes now to elections, he loses. He becomes the head of opposition. So in this sense, Netanyahu is not in a very easy position to say yes to Donald Trump.
Right. So, Chand, one final thing I wanted to understand, and Trump seems to be already moving on from the Gaza peace plan, although we are still on phase 1, to Iran, because he did make a mention of Iran, already on to Iran. And don't you think that is something that he needs to look at first vis-a-vis the Gaza peace plan, because Hezbollah and Iran could be creating problems in the region as well, and that also needs to be taken into consideration?
No, but seriously, I think Iran's capabilities have been seriously dented after the recent skirmishes or the attack by Israel in particular, and also was joined in by the United States. I don't think Iran is really in a position to play any major role, and you can see telltale signs of that. The fact there was a brilliant operation carried out by the Israelis to virtually decimate Hezbollah has also served as a shot in the arm for Israel. But look, all of these things are temporary. Why I say temporary, and temporary could mean 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. This is not the kind of lasting peace anybody wants, partly because I don't see how Israel can, at this point in time or for the foreseeable future, accept any kind of a Palestinian state, because Israel, for very valid reasons, feels a real and clear and present danger to its existence from that particular entity, especially if that was to be taken over by somewhat radical elements. And where is the certainty that might not happen 10 years from now or 20 years from now? We've seen how politics operate in various parts of the world. So Israel has to be
given. It is first step in lasting peace, of course, but this is progress as phase 1 is now complete. I'd like to thank all my guests for joining me on the broadcast. Unfortunately, totally run out of time on this one. Thank you so much for being a part of all the discussions here on Plain Speak.